They're literally lying to you. They are
Yes.
literally lying to you. This is propaganda that they are spitting to you to try and groom your children and shift you into their ideology.
Yes.
So they can groom your children.
I was going to say, because the argument is into what ends, what evil villain is on the other end of this groom that is in receipt of the groomed masses.
And
really what it is it's ideology versus science. That's what this is. It is ideology.
And we can only get so far into it because neither you or I yet are
Nowhere
well-versed
near.
enough to break down this ideology. The best thing that we can do is recommend that everyone here listen to the Groomer Schools series of new discourses, the James Lindsay podcast, in which he does go over Marxist readings and explains to you that there is, I have a fucking paper here.
I'm going to go ahead and pull it up on my Spotify real quick. Because, yes, I do have it. There we go. Take a look, everybody. You can find new discourses. James Lindsay.
And this is from Groomer Schools 2. There is a long-running ideological project to groom children out of childhood innocence so that they can become politically malleable.
That is
Go down a little
so
bit.
messy.
You went past it.
It was right here.
Yeah. Oh, you were showing. Okay.
I was showing, and then there's Groomer
Yep.
Schools. And
Yep,
then
and then
recently
there's
he
Groomer
did a Groomer School 3.
Yeah, and
More
I didn't
recent,
know
back
about
in
that
December.
one, but I got
We're new.
yes.
It's okay.
So,
I didn't have another hour last night to give to James Lindsay because this shit is rough, by the way. And just for everybody so they know what they're getting into if they look at this stuff up. He is literally reading
the papers themselves.
that were written that pushes, that back up legislation like this kind of stuff that we've been talking about and all this. Like, this is the actual peer-reviewed article, essays that they are referring to that are developing that are being implemented in institutions like schools that are then being translated into your children.
They're being used to inform the policy that your children and the curriculum that your children are being educated under.
Yes.
That's what they're doing.
And so
the teachers are reading
yes.
these, they're learning from them. They are then implementing those strategies into your children in government-funded schools.
Yes.
They are actively working to dismantle the innocence of your children to make them tools for the revolution. And that sounds crazy. That sounds fucking crazy. When you have
crazy,
there are devout and admitted Marxists throughout our university system, right? There's no lie about that. There are articles from our government, from the different intelligence agencies, that Marxists have infiltrated our universities. There is no doubt about this. There is no question. This is a coordinated effort to destabilize. This is a coordinated effort to destabilize our society through youth, and it starts here. It can be seen in the outright assault on these bills and laws. From my learning thus far, I believe that this plot to be rooted in Marxism/communism, and we have covered before that the prosperity of that ideology will lead to the death of liberty, individuality, and potentially millions of people. And I realize just how extreme this sounds, but this has been going on for decades.
Yes.
This is
Since the 60s.
a
50s.
long-running plot. And I cannot break it down too in-depthly because I don't want to bastardize it. I don't want to fuck it up.
No. I think that in the future, at some point, there will be scholars that spend entire lifetimes researching what is happening, and it's stemming essentially from the Bolshevik Revolution at the end of World War I, all the way until now. We're experiencing the same. We're part of the same flow. This is all still part of the same issue from back then.
Right.
And so, that being said, there is a lot of very difficult to read and comprehend literature set as the foundation of these ideologies that people since like the 50s have been following and pontificating on, and then writing more and more literature based off of these things. It's kind of like philosophy. It starts with Plato, and next thing you know, you end up with Kant, and you got to go 6, 7, 8 layers down. It's the same deal with this critical theory Marxism type stuff, involvement in the educational institutions alone just in that aspect of it. It goes back for decades and decades and decades. And so it takes a long time to become proficient enough in it. And right now, James Lindsay is one of those people that we kind of rely on because he has been so engrossed in it his entire life. It is and has been his entire passion, his adult life, to study this stuff and expose it for what it is.
Yeah, because
And so we rely on people like that because he's already spent a lifetime doing it, and he's only still scratching the surface.
well, I wouldn't say a lifetime. His background is he's a mathematician. That's what he went to school for. Just
His professional adult life in
right.
academia.
And that's what I'm saying. Is just only that it's as he got older
That's
that
true.
he learned about this shit, and that's why he's still learning. Is because he hasn't been doing it his entire career, But to your point, it's only taken him this amount of time to break down this ideology into what its true core is, right?
Yeah.
That these ideals of, like when I was listening on the way here today, he was talking about this paper in groomer schools too, where they were suggesting that the way to best comfort and assimilate trans youth, queer youth, because that's what the paper is, it's queer theory, right, is to treat every child as if they're queer so that you can make room for the potential of those queer children and they can feel more comfortable.
Yes.
And that if in that process you happen to quote unquote, more children queer, then it's fine because they were queer anyway.
Yes. Yeah, it's queer
And
affirmation.
Queer affirmation. And the queer, again, is not a denigrative term. That is the term that they are using, right?
Yeah,
and
it's-
queer is anything other than the average. It's anything other than the average is what they are using it as.
And I think what were its words when it's defined specifically towards gender, it's like it's gender without structure or something like to that effect. It's like gender without organization. I can't exactly remember what it is, but that's the way it's defined in, I think that he talks about that in, is it number 2 or number 1?
Number 2.
Number 2, a little bit, yeah. And that's because it breaks it out into what their definition of queer is in those regards to these essays that he's talking about.
Right.
And you have to use their terms when you're reading and trying to comprehend these writings of theirs, which to the layman, if you are reading these things, sound like a foreign language half the time. There's too many isms and ists, and everything is fundamentalists. And, it's all just this. It's like layers of doublespeak from 1984 on top of each other, and that's
Right.
And so they've developed their own vocabulary and all this stuff, so that only their own, cult members can read the text that they put out because it is
Right.
code for other things.
They start making words like futurity and
Futurity.
things like that.
Oh my God.
James Lindsay is like, well, they made it up. Like,
Yes.
So that's what this word means.
Yeah.
You have to read other papers to find out what their own terms mean so you can understand the papers that they're spreading to other people.
Yep.
And James Lindsay best related this to, like I said earlier, modern day Red Guard, right? Because so
Yeah.
much of this is based in the old generation. This is what the previous generation is doing, that your parents are putting upon you this assumed heteronormativity that is stifling your potential queerness, that we, as your teachers and your mentors, want to help discover and mine out of you, right? Your parents are doing this. It's the old generation that's doing this. Let's look up real quick. The Four Olds, right? Because that was
that's part of it.
Four Olds is part of Marxism. That was part of the Little Red Book that was given to all students, and eventually they started beating their parents and teachers to death because they had to remove everything old.
Yeah, a little crossover probably with some of that Yuming Park book in North Korea. Some of that ideology carries through into countries like North Korea.
The
these
four
days.
olds can be put into 4 categories: old ideas, old culture, old customs, and old habits. Items such as religious symbols, old scriptures, and traditional dress fell into some of these categories. Superstitious beliefs such as luck, any signs of advantage over others, children's respect for elders, and words for styles of clothing or foreign background also fell under the 4 olds. What are we talking about? We're talking about old culture.
We're
That's
talking about
old
everything
culture.
that
Your
came
parents-
before.
Your parents are putting
Yep.
that in you. Your
Yep.
parents are doing that. Old customs. What is childhood innocence? Childhood innocence is something that is put on your children that will naturally stifle their ability to discover sexual pleasure at whatever age is natural, because it's all socially constructed. Childhood innocence is a socially constructed idea
Yes.
that you have put on your own children that is stifling their own happiness,
Yep.
their own discovery of pleasure.
Because the underprivileged, their children do not have the privilege of safeguarding their children from those cruel harms of the world that truly exist. And so, again, by those people not having to deal with that, they are in a privileged position. And this carries over into the realm of the critical race theory, which is also rooted in the same exact ideological writings that you're talking about right now. This stuff, it's all tied together. Critical gender theory, critical race theory. Critical anything theory stems from the founding of the Frankfurt School and the founders of that school that led to the Marxism, that led to what we're talking about right now.
It's cultural Marxism.
Yes. It all goes back. And it's not communist. This is something, I had a conversation with somebody earlier. Communist, socialist, whatever it is, democracy, whatever it is that you're talking about. These are
Marxism.
Governmental systems that sound very much like ideological systems. Ideological systems breed governments. Governments do not breed the ideology. In this case, Marxism is the birthright, is the ideology behind communism and socialism, and in some cases, fascism. But that's how you have to separate the two. One is a governmental system that is the IRL version of humans' expansion on the ideology. Marxism is the ideology that it is all rooted in.
Yes. Yeah, no, 100%.
Welcome to the south of the streets, coming at you every week with this food for thought. Hope you ready to eat everything.